And many thanks to Luc Chatel for bringing us all together. This is a strong signal for the European industry as a whole. And thank you, Luca, for being our ASEA president. And I know your focus and our common task is on pushing the automotive industry ahead. And even though we may not always have and cannot have the exact same perspective, ASEA and you demonstrate what we can achieve when Europe acts together to boost our collective interests. Ladies and gentlemen, the German-French partnership has long been the cornerstone of Europe's success. And this is especially true in the automotive industry and has always been because the automotive industry are the shapers of many other industries in Europe. However, the basis of our success and prosperity is under increasing pressure, and the mood in Europe is currently trending to one of pessimism, isn't it? Do we no longer believe in our innovative capacity? Do we have fear of the future instead of a desire to shape it? What is happening to us here? And I would like to offer 3 theses today on how European industry, and particularly the automotive sector, can maintain its competitiveness in a changing economic global landscape. First, European policy needs to create a coherent industrial framework to ensure long-term success. Currently, there are different perspectives on the short-term trajectory on the automotive industry in Europe. And of course, as it was mentioned, we need a short-term review 2025 as an industry as a whole, not to run into things we don't want to do. But for me, there is an even more critical question about the viability of the long-term trajectory. I think we can all agree on this point. In his recently published study on Europeans' competitiveness from European Central Bank President, former Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi described the precarious situation European industry is currently in. And although he is correct with his estimations, there is too much discussion on the 800 billion euros of investments needed annually, because then people have an excuse to give up. And for me, his thoughts about our overregulation are more relevant. He argues that only if Europe's ambitious climate targets are matched by a coherent plan to achieve them will decarbonization be an opportunity for Europe. And this plan does not exist right now. I would argue for an approach when European policy opens new avenues to bolster European competitiveness. And this would mean regulating in a step-by-step approach. It would require defining intermediate targets, setting phases to let market forces take effect, and then carefully reviewing and setting new targets based on success factors, global competition, and of course the geopolitical situation. This is how business and industry operates all along. And to begin with, the EU needs to initiate an earlier review of long-term targets, which are no longer realistic based on current market dynamics. We primarily have a market problem that cannot be solved with government regulation, but only through steady growth. Purchase subsidies, as it was mentioned, for xEVs are market distorting, expensive, and unsustainable. We will not achieve organic growth targeting a specific date just because regulation wants it that way. Instead, reliable and consistent fiscal frameworks that last are crucial, as well as the needed investment in infrastructure. The European Union's ICE ban from 2035 could also threaten the European automotive industry in its heart, and will, with today's assumptions, lead to a massive shrinking of the industry as a whole. It creates barriers on current successful technologies while not adequately investing in new paths and technologies to achieve the EU's climate goals. And that leads to my second thesis. Technology neutrality is the key to European competitiveness. In many fields and industry, Europe has long held a technological advantage. Let us not give up on our strength. To maintain the successful course, a strictly technology-agnostic path with a policy framework is essential. And the only thing that counts in the end is the ton of CO2 that is not emitted, and the earlier the better, and not the technological way how this reduction is achieved. And that is why BMW invests both in vehicle technology and into decarbonizing our supply chain. And all technologies need and can contribute. Efficient combustion engines, plug-in hybrids, and of course electric vehicles, which are the main growth path all along. Just regulating in-use emissions of new cars is not up to the challenge anymore. We need to address all levers we have in a new comprehensive strategy. And by pursuing a technology-open approach, BMW has continuously overachieved our European Union fleet targets in the last several years, and plans to do so in 2025. We've made progress in decarbonization in the here and now by optimizing all drivetrain variants, and of course the efficiency of the whole vehicle. And moreover, we see hydrogen fuel cell cars as a complementary option to BEVs. Our pilot fleet of the iX5 hydrogen has seen an incredible positive market response in the EU, but even more so outside the European Union. BMW is a global company. If incentive schemes to boost BEVs demand are necessary, they should only focus on unbureaucratic support for private and public charging points and hydrogen refueling infrastructure. And beyond drivetrains, there is great potential with alternative fuels. There are 250 million vehicles in the European Union, which could now immediately contribute to climate protection. But this requires targeted investment in the ramp-up of e-fuels to set regulatory incentives. And today, we are nowhere near a single European BEV market. This is the task at hand. Ladies and gentlemen, both the United States and China have developed aggressive and very effective long-term transition strategies combined with fast, adaptive, and pragmatic approaches for their execution. Both will continue to be markets for non-EV drivetrains technology even after 2035. We know this today. And both countries will have local production to serve demand while also contributing to climate targets by constantly improving all technologies. And that brings me to my final thesis. Through technology leadership, Europe can expand its strategic autonomy and develop a global position of strength. This will open up reciprocal partnership opportunities, including with China. And to invest in the future of our businesses and to future-proof jobs, we need to achieve profitable growth. And that is what will allow us to keep up with Chinese and, of course, American players. And to finance investments in new technologies, the European Union needs to foster investment in areas where it is already leading. And ultimately, this will allow Europe to develop more strategic autonomy. And with the success of our technology-open strategy, BMW sees itself as a European champion, able to lead its segment in Europe, in the United States, and in China. At BMW, we recognized the trend in regionalization years ago. With our local-for-local strategy, we have been securing local supply chains and production while reacting flexibly to individual market developments. And this has afforded us resilience in our business model. Finding the balance between local approaches and needs and the free markets and global cooperation that the automotive industry as a whole requires to function is crucial. With our technologies, European OEMs meet customer needs worldwide, because technology openness goes far beyond just the drivetrain offering. It is precisely the variety of offerings from European manufacturers that make us so strong and will continue in the future across brands, segments, and also vehicle sizes, including premium vehicles and SUVs. And this is how we are able to hold our own with new players emerging across the globe. Our key advantage is the competence we have learned over decades of integrating the best technologies and systems into a comprehensive package that customers want and pay for. For the automotive industry, geopolitical resilience and access to markets and raw materials remains critical to success and future viability, while also reducing dependencies on China through openness to technologies. A correction of the 100% BEV target for 2035 as part of a comprehensive CO2 reduction package would also afford European OEMs less resilience on China for batteries. All electric vehicles remain a key growth segment, don't get me wrong, even if it remains volatile and market depending in the short term. Improved framework conditions with comprehensive charging environment and reliable and affordable energy will help the market in Europe grow organically. And hydrogen offers an opportunity to use our expertise and take the lead on an emerging technology that will contribute to our climate goals. And unlike BEVs, without the need for large amounts of raw materials which are not localizable at large scale in Europe. And now is the time for Europe to work on the framework conditions, including in local hydrogen production. Maintaining technological leadership while maintaining independence will invite investment and open avenues to establish reciprocal partnerships. This can help us to gain know-how in key areas like battery cells, establish supply chains, and build up the skilled labor needed for new technologies in the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment for European industry. The long-term path that European policy has set is veering away from the successful one we have been on for decades. How can Europe retain its competitiveness in the future? We need a policy that creates frameworks which drive progress and prosperity rather than setting roadblocks to existing successful technologies. And companies should be free to take care of their solutions. It is possible to make our contribution to society in pursuing climate goals, wealth and prosperity through an empowering industrial policy framework. And all of this strengthen the key industry for France and Germany, long-standing automotive industries, while ensuring the competitiveness and economic security for this partnership, which is crucial to Europe's success. Thank you.
Thank you, please. Thank you, Oliver. During your speech, you mentioned technology neutrality, meaning that Europe maybe should not have said that EV was the only solution, that we needed to maybe fix a goal, an objective in terms of CO2 emission, but we didn't need to fix exactly which technology we needed to choose. I understand, but isn't it too late to have this discussion? Is there still an option that we can still manage differently, or the rules have been fixed and nothing will change?
There is a rule in life, seldomly too early, but never too late. When you look at the globe with different segments, BMW operates from the very high luxury segment with Rolls-Royce and the 7 Series, all the way to 1 Series and Mini. So we cover all segments. And we are a true global company. We sell less than 1 million cars in Europe and more than 1.5 million outside of Europe. So we have a global perspective, and we don't see a way that if you have a global perspective, there is a path inside of 10 years to conclude that there's only one technology. You might argue that this technology might be the most efficient solution, which is true, by the way. But if you look at geopolitical interdependencies, if you look the cost of raw materials, if you look at customer behavior, if you look at charging infrastructure, we come to a completely different solution.
It's not one size fits all.
It's impossible. It's not only that we wish it, we think it's impossible. And it's not too late to react on that because, as it was mentioned earlier, the BEV segment in Europe is slower growing, but it is growing. It's the fastest growing segment in the world if you take a global view. But I think there will become a point of time where it becomes very inefficient to push that further. That is still far away. That's when we have 50-60% market share worldwide.
You mean 100% electric vehicles in Europe?
I think it's impossible. If you continue that, this industry will shrink massively. So we need, and there are other. If you look at different view, I think CO2 reduction is the main task. We're not going away from this. But if you look at the cost of the battery, the geopolitical dependency of the battery, and the charging infrastructure, there is an alternative way to reduce emissions with an emission-free technology, which is hydrogen. You have 80% less size of the battery, which is by far the most expensive part of the car. And it does not follow easily economies of scale laws, because the harder you push it, the more expensive it will get, because it's a raw material. That's why it's called a raw material. And you need completely independent of today's charging infrastructure, name petrol stations. You need a completely separate charging infrastructure. With hydrogen, you can use the current infrastructure. So for all regions, cities, and sub-areas of cities, where you cannot build up charging infrastructure with the electrical grid, there is an alternative.
So basically, you're telling us that European regulators need a wake-up call. They need to wake up to the reality. When will that happen, and what will be the trigger to make them change the rules that have been fixed?
I think doing policy today is an extremely difficult task because you have so many stakeholders. No one needs a wake-up call. Everyone needs to collaborate, to listen what is possible, to take awareness of the fact that markets are a part of that discussion. You cannot force privately organized markets into something, especially if you have an exit strategy. You can push, you can incentivize, you can support, you can tax, but to push them in a one-directional measure, I think everyone knows that now. We need a correction here. And what I currently see that policymakers see the risk if we don't work together on that. So there's an opportunity to have a review. And as I mentioned, I think what we see in the United States and China, they push CO2 reduction very hard, but they do it adaptive. They do it pragmatic. They do it market-oriented. And I think we should turn into that path.
You started your presentation, and this is going to be my last question, by saying that France and Germany have been collaborative partners in terms of the automobile industry. There is one subject today which is retaliation against China or protectionism against Chinese EV manufacturers, where we have the impression, seeing from Paris, that maybe the German OEMs and the French OEMs don't exactly share the same point of view. What is your point of view on the taxes that have been imposed on Chinese imports in Europe? Do you think it's a good decision that it's going to help Europe, car manufacturers?
No.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
I'll explain you why. It's not. First of all, you should not be afraid of everything. you know, the market share of the Chinese is still very low. They're pushing very hard. We're not blind, but it's not so easy to sell non-European cars in Europe. You know, we've done this for 40, 50 years. We have the Koreans here, we have the Toyotas. So we shouldn't be over afraid. We should be aware of competition. Don't get me wrong. But we shouldn't give up before the race has even started. You know, we should not do that. Second of all, BMW is, in that sense, Chinese. We are importing cars from China over here, and we are inflicted by that tax. Of course, we don't like that, because it will harm European consumers. They will pay more for their cars. And is that the sense of a policy to harm consumers? You know, it will definitely make cars more expensive in Europe. So we have a different competitiveness. We say we don't need protection. We need fair trade rules. That's the only point I say, well, there might be a positive outcome, that we have fair trade rules, but after that we should embrace competition and free trade, because we're also exporting cars from Europe into China. We have a thriving China for China market. So to say we are only here in Europe is not our reality we live in.
Oliver, thank you very much for being a big part of the success of the Mondial this year in Paris and being here on stage with us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Oliver.